G'day guys and welcome back to the channel. We are returning tonight for the EH show. We had James Maloney, a fantastic chat with international representative over in England currently, and we've got plenty of guests planned up for the rest of the season. The growth of the channel has been absolutely phenomenal, and I am wearing Drom, our sponsor. So before this video starts, I just want to give a big shout out to Drom Clothing. Go and check out Drom Clothing Co. on Instagram and drom.com.au. This is the black Live the Dream design. Just holding up some designs for you. And don't forget to use code ENT as for Entertain House 15 so that you do get a discount at Drom Clothing. But today, guys, we have a fantastic guest. We're getting into a different side of rugby league here. We've had Josh Papali. We've had commentary with Katie Brown. But something that interests me, and I think the criticism that people give referees, they are people, they are on-field people, and that's why it's so important to get that perspective. Today, after 300 on-field appearances, we have referee Grant Atkins. Thank you for coming on the show, buddy.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you for the kind introduction.
No, that's not a problem. Look, I want to say congratulations on a decade of refereeing. We mentioned at the start that you celebrated your 300th on-field appearance. So you've done the touch judge side of things, but 300 basically on-field appearances. You started refereeing a decade ago. Yep. My own Parramatta Eels against the Roosters back in 2011, your first head referee appearance there. How much have you grown personally in regards to decision-making or trust with those around you, whether it be touch judge or bunker? How do you feel like the last decade has been yourself in your career?
Oh, look, officiating over that time has changed significantly, and that's as a result of a number of things. When you look back in your career, you kind of at different stages, you think you're sort of nailing your game. And then as you look back a number of years later, you kind of, if you were to watch your games back from then, now you probably shrug your shoulders a bit and sort of think, what are you doing? But that's part of any kind of elite sport. And I say that, I don't say that too lightly in terms of being in elite sport. What we do as a group and as individuals is pretty significant. There's obviously only 20 or so of us in the country that do it at the elite level. And there's a lot of young kids that take up refereeing that sort of don't stick to it because the pathway to the NRL, it's a fairly unique and niche pathway, and probably more so now that we're back to one referee as well. So yeah, it's changed over a number of things, and that's I came in at the period where two referees had just begun. 2009 was the first season of that, and I ran my first line round 7, I think, in 2009. So the model of the two referee changed significantly during that period of time. At the start, it was kind of 50-50, and the assist ref just stood back and watched, and then it evolved into where they became a bit more of what was the pocket referee, where they're in and around the ruck assisting with that. Then it's funny because in rugby league, moments within sport generally change what happened. And when we think about sort of Paul Gallen, Nate Miles, 2 weeks after that, we banned punching. There was a tackle by Greg Inglis on Dean Young, and the week later, we changed the rule around the shoulder charge. So moments in rugby league change the way that it's played and the way that it's officiated. And I think in that period of time, there was a number of games where we changed the model around the two referee system. And effectively, we obviously got to COVID last year, and all of a sudden we went back to one referee, which for the majority of the group had never refereed an NRL game by themselves. And the next period of time is going to prove really interesting because there's going to be guys that have come from the reserve. The last time they'd refereed a game would have been reserve grade by themselves into first grade by themselves. Whereas for myself and a lot of the other guys now that are head referees, we were blooded through that two referee system. So you got a fair bit of exposure in terms of learning the ropes on field with that pressure of being the referee or one of the referees. But also not having all the weight and expectation of the game being on you individually. So it'll be really interesting, and it's a really good challenge for some of those guys who haven't debuted yet to be those first people in probably 13, 14 years to make their debut in the NRL by themselves, sort of thrown to the wolves, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk. You've mentioned that how much the game has changed over the years based on those decisions and things that have happened. So, look, how for you was refereeing the 2013 and the 2017 Rugby World Cup? Because obviously your role is weekly basis. You're refereeing 16 National Rugby League teams, and that definitely would have been a different experience. How was that experience, and has that reflected the game and its rules based on scenarios that have happened internationally?
I think international football is one of the most enjoyable football to referee. What happens is that it's a finite competition in terms of how many games they play in their pool before either progressing or dropping out. It's actually far less pressure, I've found, at international level. There's a different approach taken by players where a lot of nations or players are happy to represent their nation. And I think that brings out a willingness just to play football rather than the tactics and the strategies to obtain the 2 points. So I think it's a bit more of a carnival atmosphere. I found that in the UK in 2013, where, and look, refereeing or officiating in the Northern Hemisphere is different to what it is in Australia. There's a lot more singing, and particularly they did a game in France. It was New Zealand and France, and it was, I think New Zealand might have won 42-0, but the French crowd in Avignon were terrific. Lots of whistling and all these kind of things that we'd never sort of experienced in the Southern Hemisphere. And it was eye-opening, to be honest. And one of the most, if I look back at the most memorable moments in my career, it was running the touchline in the 2013 World Cup.
That's fantastic to hear. It's such a different atmosphere and countries coming together like that, just like the current Olympics that we're going through at the moment. You see the pride of representing not only the National Rugby League, but your country for all those countries and those players. It must be fantastic. Well, part of your career and a challenging part of your career is that controversial decisions, whether the people think that they're right or they're the wrong, they're made by a referee, or in that case, two referees on field throughout your career. How do you cope with the type of criticism, whether it be on social media or in person with those people, and kind of black out those comments or even discuss them? How do you approach it?
Yeah, if you break it down, in person, it's not that common. Anyone that sort of will approach you at the shops or on the street that sort of recognise you, they generally just want to talk about football. And talk about the experiences, and that's people on the street generally won't have a crack. I haven't experienced that. People online, obviously, there's a different level of bravado there when they can sort of sit behind their computer. And so I'm fairly conscious about what platforms of social media I'm on, and they're kind of locked down to friends and family. But you know that the hard thing is that, because I've obviously got two young children, that they listen, the TV's on and the radio's on, and there are times when your name will get mentioned. And that's hard on them, because to them, I'm not a referee. To them, I'm just dad. And to hear your father sort of spoken about frequently on talkback radio, or if it's on the news and things like that, that's a level of challenge that obviously comes with the job. But sometimes it is unfair, and I'm not, obviously everyone in our group will have experienced that at different times, and I imagine the players will do that as well. So it's just a matter of, I think in the period of time I've been a full-time referees, you start to understand whether or not your performance is acceptable, or good, bad, or indifferent, really. And as long as you've got a real understanding of that, and if you're honest with yourself about it, well, the criticism doesn't really matter, because the people that are criticising you are not having any influence on your career going forward, and have probably had no influence on your career up to this point. So their opinions sort of don't really matter.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I didn't really think of that side of the whole family situation that does come with the job, but makes it really difficult. It's really good to hear that you're not copying it on the street too. There are, as you said, a lot of people on social media, and whether it be Facebook NRL comments and ripping into those types of referees, whether it be yourself or within your group. So it's really good to see that more positivity shine, people talking about rugby league rather than negativity. Did you personally ever play rugby league in your junior years? You're obviously very passionate about the game. Was it always your mindset to be a referee, or were you hoping to be in an NRL team growing up?
Well, I played all up until I was 14. Obviously, Dad had a pretty successful career with Parramatta and the Roosters, winning premierships there, and he played 150 games of first grade. So for me, it's like I said before about being the child in that situation. Is Dad just played footy and that's what he did. Oh, sorry, he taught as well. But he's just one of those people that he was always Dad first. His dad played a couple of games for Parramatta as well, first grade. So growing up, it was kind of like, I remember Stewie Raper, who was our boss for a couple of years with Bill Harrigan, and he's pulled me aside. He goes, welcome to the Son of Club. Obviously with John Raper being his dad. And I remember him making that comment, and Dad's really proud of what I've done now. He sort of mentioned last week when I've sort of reached that milestone that he sort of only achieved half of that. But yeah, I wanted to play. And the only reason I stopped was I had a coach that I didn't really get on with. I didn't think I was getting a fair go. So I didn't have a part-time job when I was at school. I thought I'll referee for just a year until the coach left. Coach didn't leave, so I ended up refereeing for 2 years. And at that stage, I was getting just over $1,000 for the year. Didn't have to go to training midweek, and didn't interfere with any schooling and things like that because it was played on weekends. So that's how I sort of got to where I am now, or that's how it began.
And then officially reaching 300 games last week, which is a huge achievement after all that adversity overcome. Look, the game speed, I feel like I'm being critical here because in the last 3 to 5 years, but I feel like it's less than that time. But I'm going to say the game speed has changed in the last 3 to 5 years. So I've got a few different questions here. It's kind of a long question, so I've got this next to me to break it down. But basically, new rules definitely play a huge part in the game. I want to know, you speak about referees being either the son of club or being close together. Do referees get an opportunity to discuss with the NRL first the decisions that will be implemented, or are they just kind of told to referees to start? And also adding to this question, do you think that the rule changes will degress or progress the game?
Firstly, so if you look at, they have the competitions committee or innovation committee that sort of get together each year. I think last year Ricky Stewart might have been on it. I know Matt Chechen was a representative from us on that committee. Matt's obviously been around for a very, very long time and has seen a whole range of rule changes. So we are part of the process to some degree because it's not just about changing the rule, but it's about, well, what's the reality of it, whether it can be implemented or not. So there's a group of people. There's obviously coaches, ex-players, administrators, and referees who form that committee, and they discuss that at the start of the year. And look, we are an adaptable bunch. If there's anyone that's had to change the most in the last 2 years, without sounding selfish, I think the referees are probably up there with the top two or three groups that have had to change the most. Going back to one referee, which is a skill set, like I said, that people hadn't done before. But like any workplace, if your boss sort of asks you to do something, you do your best to implement it. We've changed so many, well, there's been so many rule changes that we've picked up really quick. Not only did we go back to one referee after the COVID break last year, we changed the whole laws around penalties and 6 agains and things like that. Now, they're things we have to pick up pretty quick. And there's an expectation from the public and the administrators of the game that they'll be implemented from what was round 3 last year on May 28 and implemented correctly. In terms of progressing or regressing the game, I mentioned earlier about how we have the no punch rule and we have the no shuttle charge rule. And I remember vividly people saying that the game will be poorer because they're not there. I think most people now would agree that the game's not any poorer because punching's gone. The game's not any poorer because the shoulder charge is gone. And even to the fact with probably more vigilance from us around high tackles after Magic Round, where we'd let some things slip, if we're being honest. And if you look at it now, there's not as many high tackles. The game changes. The players have a competition and a premiership on the line, and they know that if this group, as in the referees, are going to go a certain way, that if they're going to get some competitive advantage out of it, they're going to have to change the ways they do. And to be honest, I don't think the rugby league since round 10 has been any worse. In fact, the high tackles have almost gone away. There'll be times when they occur, but I think any rule change that happens has been. I don't think the game's poorer because of it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. When you're not refereeing, how much rugby league do you watch? I feel like you might have potentially already answered this question because I was going to ask you when your favourite time as well to referee is, but you mentioned the 2013 World Cup. Yeah. But when you're not refereeing, I've got 3 scenarios here. I wanted to know your favourite out of the 3, but if you've got another one, throw it at me. So State of Origin, everyone loves Origin. Grand final time. I believe you haven't refereed a grand final, so hopefully that gets to be done soon. And then round 1, obviously the hype for round 1 and it to come along. How much rugby league do you watch and when's your favourite time to watch it?
You tend to watch a lot. So I do a bit of work in the bunker as well. So naturally you see a lot. So you're probably watching at least 2 games a week. You watch it because you like the sport. You don't sort of watch it to watch other people referee or things like that. You like it as a contest. Yeah. So, yeah, you tend to watch a bit. You tend to see a bit because I've always said the best way to learn how to referee is by 1, doing it, and 2, watching other people do it. If you think about junior coaches, if you go to a junior league ground any weekend, every team has a coach. And some of the skill sets that are being taught within that hobby of playing is issued by a coach. Junior referees, if you go to those same junior league grounds, it's because of a variety of reasons. It's really hard to get people to coach referees. So you actually tend to learn a lot about refereeing by doing it yourself, or when there's other games on at a junior league ground, you've watched other people do it. To be honest, I actually think I'm a better referee now by having done over 100 touchlines because I saw good referees and I saw referees that struggled in certain games. And it was through those experiences where you watched and were part of it, you're like, well, okay, if that happens to me when I'm refereeing, I might do it the same or I might do it differently. So in terms of watching the sport, you come across it a lot because it's your job.
Yeah.
And the other, to be honest, because there's obviously a big push, and there always is a push to be consistent across the 8 games, you've got to kind of know what's happening in other games and what other people are doing, and if you're going to apply the same thing. I've always found in terms of pressure is not you don't sort of feel it now, but there's a great level of importance probably on the first referee of each round. So on the Thursday night game. Because if the referees on Thursday night go poorly, all of a sudden the conversation for the weekend across all the media outlets become about the referees. So there's actually then pressure placed on the rest of the group. If you get off to a really good start early in the week as an officiating group, it takes a lot of pressure off that round for the other officials. And I've been through a number of seasons now where something's gone awry on the Friday night, and then it's actually made it really difficult for the rest of the referees. In terms of times of excitement to be part of, I was standby referee in 2019, which just missed out there, which was disappointing at the time. And then I was standby for this whole Origin series. So there's obviously a drive to be part of that. I always find round 1 is the most exciting to be part of. And the reason is that everything you do is to referee. So you'll come back to training in November and you'll go through all the hard slog of preseason, and honestly, it feels like you're training all week for nothing on the weekend. And then finally round one rolls around, and the reason that you go through all those difficult and challenging times in a preseason is to be part of the game. So I've always found round one of the best times. And to be honest, the crowds are unreal in round one because the fans are equally as excited. The players, they'd probably feel the same. So round one's a really good time to be part of it.
That's awesome. That's a really good answer. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Grant. I really do appreciate it. And once again, congratulations on 300 on-field appearances. Guys, make sure you do like and subscribe to the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 2 of the EH show. Plenty of guests to come. Like this video, leave your comment below for Grant, and I'll see you guys later.